how to stop being baited by the narcissist and essentially communicate more effectively within family court. Because what will happen is your ex will really wind you up. They'll be sending you lots of accusations or very subtle phrases or different communication that triggers you into a response that they've conditioned of you. And then they can take your response and show everyone and go, see, I told you they're this, that, and the other. And the more you fall into that trap, the more their narrative gains strength. But also, when you're communicating with professionals, you need to be mindful of what you think is reasonable communication and how it might be interpreted. So, we're going to take a look at all of that today. So, first of all, why is it such a big issue? Especially within family court, when you're dealing with someone who's high conflict and narcissistic. Well, essentially, it's because they're going to use your words against you, as I've described. Everything you say can and will be used against you. They will twist and distort it to fit their narrative, and they are masters at provoking a reaction within you. They have conditioned you to have a certain amount of buttons within you, and some of these will be from childhood, so they're just building on them. So they know what they can say a certain phrase or imply something that no one else can see. It's very covert, but you know what they mean and you react to that subtle undertone of what they're saying. And so to everyone else, you look paranoid, you look unreasonable, you look unstable because they don't know the conditioning that you've had. And so they will use that to their advantage. They will use that, especially in front of other people, to make you look crazy and abusive and angry, all the things that they are setting you up to be. They will use communication in order to do that. Now, your emotions are normal and natural. You have been in an abusive relationship. You have been psychologically abused and manipulated, gaslit, deceived. And so your emotions are all over the place. You've got complex PTSD. You're not in full control. I've spoken before, it's really important for you to do that work. It's really important for you to start to gain some understanding of your emotional reactions so that you can become less baited. But they're going to use it against you. They are going to use your normal reaction and paint it as being abnormal. They're going to paint it against this backdrop of whatever it is that they are accusing you of. And so you need to know how you fit in with that. How can you make sure you're not falling into those traps? You also need to know what you're being watched for. So your ex will use your communication, whether that be text, email, face to face. They'll use it against you, not just with professionals within the court process, but also with your children. Try and think, and this is really hard, but try and think everything you say to your ex, they're going to share with your children. And they're not going to share the context. They're not going to share how they were accusing you of X, Y, and Z, and you were actually just standing up for yourself. They are going to just tell them the bit where you called them a name or you shouted at them because you got frustrated. So try and think, how will my children interpret this? How do I want my children to see me communicating with this person? Because that will help you in family court to come across as being child focused, because you are. When you're thinking, how will my children perceive this? That's child focused. So that's how you're going to come across better in court and more child focused, is if you get into the practice of thinking, my children are always watching me. Even if it's a private conversation, your ex is going to be showing them your side of it. So just be mindful of everything you send to them. It's more than likely being shown to your children. Even if it's not, just assume that it is, because it will help you to stay child focused. And that is what the legal professionals are looking for, is what Kafkas are looking for. So when you lose it and you go off on one, we've all done this, by the way, this is said without judgment. I've been there. I've had the hour-long argument back and forth trying to get through to them. you need to learn to manage them and recognize when you're getting triggered so that you don't play the game and that you do refocus yourself on, okay, how would this look to the children? So let's have a look at some of the most common mistakes that are made. So the first one is that emotional reaction itself. Now, that's not to say that you're not going to have emotional reactions. You will always have emotional reactions. They are part of who we are. And especially when you're recovering from post-traumatic stress disorder, your emotions are a little bit like naughty kittens. You are just trying to manage them and recognize them, and you're trying to get them under control. But, every now and again, they're going to go a bit haywire. So let go of any guilt about that. But you've got to get to know yourself and your triggers better than your ex knows you and your triggers, so that when they press a button, it doesn't work. Because when it doesn't work, they dysregulate. So every time you disarm a button that they've installed in you to react a certain way, they are the ones that then dysregulate and end up looking like all the things they're accusing you of being. That projection is then revealed. So every time you think about responding sarcastically, passive aggressively, long rants, or just outright angry, remember, hang on a minute, this is going to get used against me and I'm not going to look great. I appreciate that's difficult in the moment, but just keep practicing and you will get better. Next one is over contacting them, especially in the early stages. I remember it so well myself, wanting answers. And in that over contacting, you can look very emotionally unstable because, to be honest, you are. And I don't mean that as a criticism. Of course you are. You just literally been walloped around the face with this situation. You're coming out of it realizing, oh my God, it was such a mess. I've been treated this way and I've been treated that way. I've been lied to. Nothing I know is true. Your whole world is upside down. Of course you're unstable. That's perfectly normal. But in looking to them for answers, you're just giving them ammunition. And they're never going to provide you with the answer that you seek. You're going to have to go within to get those answers. You're going to have to look inside yourself and go, why did I get involved with this? Why did I, take that? Why did I listen to that lie? Some part of me knew that was a lie. Why did I not say anything? And this isn't about blame at all, because there's lots of reasons why you wouldn't say anything. But it's about not asking them for information, not asking them for answers, not asking them for closure, not asking them for a reasonable response. This is about going, actually, there's no point. It's wasted energy asking them for anything, because it just won't work. It will actually work against you because you will end up looking unstable. Bringing personal information and personal issues into a co-parenting communication. And again, I understand this because you've been treated badly. You're a person in your own right. You deserve to be treated better. You're angry. You're hurt. You're trying to make sense of it all. I understand when you're talking about something, you could quite easily, oh, that's typical of you. You always did this to me. You're gaslighting me. These are personal things that you're saying. It's not about co-parenting. So again, go back to thinking, are my children going to understand what I'm saying here? How are they going to feel if they're shown this text message? What am I going to look like to them? And just step back. If you're feeling like that's what you want to say, step away. Don't do it with them. You're not going to get anywhere. You're just going to land yourself in it more. And like I say, it will get used against you either with professionals or with children. Tit for tat accusations. And again, I know how awful that can sound and feel, because actually there's real truth to your accusations. They did gaslight you, they did abuse you, they did lie to you, they did manipulate you, they did hurt you, they did all of these things. But when they are making accusations at you and you go back with yours, to anyone who doesn't know the proper dynamics, i.e., anyone involved in the court process, you're just going to look as bad as each other. You're going to look high conflict between the both of you. And that is not helpful. So when they make an accusation, You don't need to respond to that at all. You don't even need to defend yourself from it because you know your truth. That's not to say that you don't, you accept what they're saying. It's not giving them the fuel to make more accusations, because if you defend yourself and say that's not what happened, blah, 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 they're not going to hear that. They're just going to make another accusation. So you get caught up in this back and forth, this what we call that word salad, where you're never actually making any progress. You're just going around in circles and bits are being thrown about all over the place. So if they're making out accusations, you don't need to get involved in that. Step back. Certainly don't start making your own accusations against them, because you will end up looking as bad as each other. And finally, involving the kids. I mean, it feels ridiculous to have to say this because most people in their right mind would know not to do that. In these situations, you're not in your right mind. And so sometimes you can bring in and say, or get the kids to say X, Y, and Z. It's not their job to act as mediators between the two of you. It is not their job to carry messages between the two of you. It is not their job to be involved in any way, shape, or form. You need to separate out that. Keep the children protected. Obviously, the children have their own voice. So the thing with the kids is encourage them to have a strong sense of self, have internal confidence, so that when they want to say something, they know that they can because they believe in themselves, but don't be sort of leading them with what to say or encouraging them with what to say, because you'll get accused of coaching. You'll get accused of manipulating the children to say something. And that's where you get into dangerous ground. So what tactics is your ex going to use in communication which will manipulate the court process? So the main one is DORVO, the deny, attack, reverse, victim and offender role. So they will claim that they are the victim of everything, and you are in fact the perpetrator. And although on the face of that, it sounds like, well, no one's going to believe that, I've got so much evidence that that isn't true. Unfortunately, in family court, it is believed far, far more than is right. It is such a powerful technique that they use to escape accountability from their part. I did nothing wrong. I'm fine. I'm the victim, and place all the emphasis on you. You're the one that's problematic. You're the one who is abused me. You're the one that's lied. Everything that they've done, they project onto you. And that's when you fall back into those other traps of standing tit for tat, making accusations against them. So you have to understand DARVO as a tactic and as a standalone tactic that you don't have to get involved in. You don't have to play that game. If you know anything about the drama triangle, where you've got victim, perpetrator, and enabler or rescuer, you are playing into that triangle every time you step into the DARVO dance. Every time you try and defend yourself against that tactic, you are playing their game. Know it's a tactic and don't fall into it, because every time you do, every time you try and defend yourself, every time you make counter allegations, every time you go tit for tat, then that's what it looks like. It looks like you are both as bad as each other rather than gaining any clarity. Sometimes the most important thing is to show them the contrast, that you can step away from this, that actually you are able to be future focused and solution focused rather than what I say has to be heard. And again, I totally understand that when you've been silenced, when you've been invalidated for years, of course you want to be heard. Of course you want to be taken seriously in what you're saying. You want someone to understand what you've been through, and you don't want that happening to your children. But in understanding that how your desire to be heard is like the louder you shout, the more aggressive you become, rather than speaking calmly, actually really thinking about, does this need to be said? Do I need to respond to that? And if you can't do that yourself, if you know, actually, I'm being baited and I'm going to fall for it because I haven't done the work on that yet. I'm not quite healed and I am going to be triggered. Ask a third party to do that. If you've got a friend or a relative who can remain detached, who can act almost in that mediator role, get them to respond for you, because they will be able to take the emotion out of it and not fall into those traps. If you don't have anyone that you think can do that, because again, they're just as likely to get triggered and be emotionally responsive, because the person that they're dealing with, this narcissistic, high conflict person, will turn the same tactics on them. So they might easily react as well. Get a complete outsider, someone who doesn't know you, doesn't know your ex, will just see it as the factual information. You can use AI for this. You could just put their message in ChatGTP and say, help me respond in a BIF format, brief, informative, friendly, and firm. And they will just come back with something that is completely non-emotional. And that's a really good way of you separating it out. So there are ways that you can not fall into the Darvo dance by just separating out your language, by not becoming emotional, by being brief, informative, friendly, and firm. So, how can you communicate in a way that protects you and supports you in court? Again, I've just talked about BIF, so that's the main one. Keep everything in writing. Now, whether that be an email, texts aren't always helpful because our brain kind of kids ourselves into thinking that informal. And also, we get text messages from other people or WhatsApps or whatever, and you don't want to be triggered every time your phone tings and it's not them. Having a separate email set up that is just for them, so having a completely separate email account, they're the only ones that have got the address for, means you can control access to it. You know when you're going in there, you can do all your preparatory work, you can settle your nervous system, you can go in with the right frame of mind, rather than you're in the middle of cooking tea, your phone pings, you pick it up, it's from them, boom, nervous system's gone. I'm going to send this back. When you've got a specific way of communicating, whether that, it can easily be through like Our Family Wizard or some of the other family communication apps, but just be mindful of getting yourself into the right headspace before you check, and turn them off. Turn notifications off, in my opinion. If it's an emergency, there will be a way that they can get hold of you. You can set something up, but just don't have notifications going off left, right, and centre, because you'll just end up being stressed all the time. So that's part of the setting boundaries, which is the next one. Don't respond to their provocations. Know when that's what they're doing. Know yourself and your nervous system well enough to know, oh, hang on a minute. Yeah, I'm feeling a bit triggered by this. I need to step away. Give yourself as long as possible between reading it and responding it, so that there's time for you to process the emotions, for you to think about it, for you to get advice, whether that be legal advice or from a friend who can, pull that out, or like I say, AI, whatever it is that you can use. Give yourself time between reading and responding. The faster you reply, the more likely you're going to reply from a triggered state. So give yourself time. That is your personal boundary. And stay child focused. Try and think, if my child was going to see this, what would they think? Am I painting myself in a light to my children? Am I involving them when I'm saying this? Am I dragging them into this? Am I hurting them with what I'm saying, even though I'm not saying it to them? If they read that, would they be hurt? Just try and have that at the forefront of your mind. This isn't easy. I'm just giving you some tools to try and help you, because ultimately, the way you communicate when you're in family court plays such an important role in not only your own emotional well-being, your children's emotional well-being, but also how you're perceived within family court as well. If you do need any further help with this, I do recommend our Court Prep Toolkit, which has lots of information on what to expect from your ex, what sort of tactics they're going to use, how to communicate with them, understanding their own weaknesses as well, so that you can almost play them at their own game, and lots of other tools around regulating your nervous system. I will leave the link for that in the description below. Take care, everyone. Bye.